that it has a particular value, but that you should be able to sell to someone for something. And the way to think about this is that all human activity could be either work or leisure. Leisure is, even if it's hard, even if you have to sweat a lot, if you produce something for your personal consumption. So if I cook myself my own meal, okay, I'm not doing it to make money, I'm doing it to satisfy a personal need. I'm in a closed system. But when you work, it's for selling things to other people, right? I'm trying to do this to earn money so that I want to buy other things that are being bought and sold in the market. Now, in the system, if I increase the supply of goods, I should also increase the demand for goods. Because if I'm selling things in the market, I'm also indicating that I have a demand, because I'm making it for a purpose. I'm making it not just to make it, I'm making it because I want something from you. And so maybe I don't want something from a particular person, or the particular person I'm giving it to or making it for, but someone else in the system is making something I want, and that creates the demand in the system. So it is zero sum, it's no free lunch, but there's also there's this trade-off system going on here. So many people interpret Say's law that if you consume more, someone else must be consuming less, and I apologize for the lowercase I right here. But basically that it's going back to this idea there's one big pizza. If you eat more pizza, that means there's less for me. And if I try to artificially stimulate demand, just like I mentioned with the cooler ring, if the Europeans show up with boatfuls full of trinkets, that's a really bad idea, because it's going to break down the signal system and the coordination that's going on from this primitive economy. And that's, you could say, what's happens when governments try, according to Say's law, what happens when governments just print money. They're artificially stimulating demand, and it's a bad idea, because the market is always right. Another version of what this is that when people are unemployed, it's like a vacation. If you think back to a few weeks ago when we did the applause auction, right? Some of you clapped for 10 minutes, some of you clapped for 1 minute. Now the people who only clapped for 1 minute said, look, I'm willing to work this much, but I value my free time or my vacation instead of working to earn, let's say, that item that was being auctioned off. And so if the way you look at unemployment in the modern world is that basically some people, and think of this in terms of opportunity cost, some people would rather have free time than the money, right? Sometimes free time is worth it. We only have so many hours in the day, and if, for a certain level of income, maybe we just rather have our free time, and what we can do with that. Now, another way thinking about Say's law is what's called the circular flow model of the economy, which is that you have this circular flow between households, like think of your family's house, and businesses or firms. And what they are is they're connected by a factor market, i.e. the inputs into the business, and a product market. And so in one way, in the center circle, you have stuff, and on the outside circle, you have a circulation of money going in the opposite direction. So think of it like this, okay? The cardboard box stands for goods and services, stuff, and then the other thing is money. And so what you see is that money is going in one direction, and the goods and services are going in the other direction, right? I give you money, I go to the store, give them money, and they give me something that I want to have. They give me stuff, okay? And the thing is, this is always balancing out, right? Because everything is connected. Right, the money is going in one loop, the goods are going in another loop, but they're always equivalent to each other. So, for example, I buy something from a company, I give them money, they give me stuff. Okay, they take my money and then go to the factor market and say, I need workers, I need inputs, I need plastic, I need metal, and that money goes in there. But those things are owned by households. And so the households then get money back, i.e. by working, i.e. by owning property or owning different types of resources, by making investments and things of that sort. And then I take, right? They give me money, and then I take that money around and buy stuff from them. That's a basic model of how the economy works. Now, this is just another version of it, is that you can see there's different types of money, traveling through the system. There's my paycheck, i.e. wages in the lower right-hand corner. There is money income that comes from owning raw materials like workers and things of that sort. There's the expenditures, right? There are things that your family spends money on, rent, new cars, clothing, food, etc. And that those expenditures are sales, right? That's the money going back to these companies that they're going to turn around and give away as wages or as buying resources or some other form of consumption. And then the opposite is this flow of actual things signified by the money. Now, another aspect to money, and I mentioned this before, is that it's a store of value. So before this, we basically discussed money as a medium of exchange, but I'm going to go on to its second basic function, which is a store of value. And the store of value basically allows you to connect the past, present, and future all in one interaction, because the money can be money now, it can be money in the future, it can be money in the past, and we can connect transactions in the past with transactions in the present with transactions in the future. But let's just start with the present. So once again, think of that circular flow diagram. We have two basic actors in the economy. We have consumers and we have producers. Then you could say we have this circular flow. We have goods and services going in one direction and money flowing in the other direction. And it's a nice self-contained system. Everything is in balance. Say's law applies because we're only dealing in the present. We don't have to assume anything about a money economy. You know, everything is happy, happy, joy, joy in the entire world. But now we have money. And we might want to, this kind of brings in other periods of time in. For example, let's just look at the future. So let's say I want to work now, but I want to spend money later. So what I can do is that I can take money or purchasing power out of the present and send it to the future. So for example, I can send savings, right? Instead of spending money now, I can kind of send my savings to the future and then go back to the bank when I want to spend in the future and take money out. Some of those savings and some of the money might be just straight investments, but other things can be pooling the savings we put into our bank and making them into investments. And these investments could be positive or negative in the future. They can be positive if they pay off. They can be negative if they don't pay off. But once again, it's taking money out of the current cycle. But we can also take money out of the future, and a way of thinking about that is in terms of credit. Okay? So for example, we can, as I mentioned before, we can borrow from our future income. The banker knows we're going to make money if we borrow money and make an investment. He knows that in the future we're going to make more money, and then I'll have more money and I'll be able to pay back this loan. Well, that's basically what, as I said, you're doing when you go to college. Most of us don't have the money in our pocket to spend 4 years of college, and so what we do is we borrow that money, and they're willing to lend us that money because our future income is going to be higher, and therefore they're willing to let's say, advance us this money, and we will pay them back later when we have, let's say, our income come in. So that's the future. The other side to this is the past. Now, what do we have coming from the past being conveyed by money? Well, the first one is debt, right? We borrowed money in the past, and now we have to pay for it in the future. Now, this is once again is sucking money out of the present, which means that there's less money being spent now because we have to take that money and use it to pay off obligations we took on in a previous period of time. And that's sucking money out of, let's say, purchasing power out of the present. But we also have money coming in. We have rents, things we purchased in the past like land or resources, or rents can include things like pension funds, right? I decided I was going to put money into a pension fund or insurance scheme or a lottery ticket, and now it's going to be paying me a flow of income. And also the money we had saved in the past is money we could spend now, right? We had sent it into the future, but the future was now for ourselves when we were in the past. Now there's two other things that can go on, at least in terms of national economies, which is kind of the spatial balance. If we export more than we import, right, that's money coming into our economy. If we import goods, okay, that's money flowing out of our economy and being sent to the country that we're buying the goods and services from. Now, that means we still have stuff, but maybe there's an imbalance in the local economy, imbalance in the domestic economy. The problem with all these different arrows that are going here is that there's no reason why they have to balance out at any given point in time. Now, before you have money, right, and you have this circular flow diagram and Say's law, you basically have a balance between consumers and producers, because everyone is functioning in one period of time in the present. And the only thing you could really have is maybe an imbalance between imports and exports. And because you had the gold standard, well, that system was balanced out by flows of gold, literally physical gold from one country to another country. But as far as our, investments, rents, savings, credit, etc., there's no reason why at any point in the time that those are actually going to be in balance, which means we can have mismatches between supply and demand, or, for example, the money flowing in one direction and the goods flowing in the other direction. And that means at a given time in the present we can have unemployed resources. We could have unemployed resources because people would rather spend money later. It's only money that's being spent now that actually goes toward, in a simple model, I realize it's not exactly instantaneous, money that's being spent now that's keeping people employed. But the point is that if in the future we rather spend the money later, okay, that's good for the future, but it's not good for now, and that could, let's say, depress the economy. We could also have, let's say, for example, too much credit coming in, i.e. too much money, too much demand, right? Because people think the future is going to be so wonderful that they kind of, let's say, advance that money to the present, which means we can have a lot of excess demand today, okay, and, well, if the future is better, then some of that credit is justified, but if it doesn't, right, you're going to have, let's say, an overheated economy, and eventually we're not going to be able to keep up with everything. So that's another issue that goes on in, let's say, the economy. Now I want to go on and, make some distinctions about what exactly is being traded here, to give you just a little more idea about what's happening in the economy. And I want to distinguish between what I call commodities and assets. And the way that I define these is not a standard way, but it's to distinguish between two basic things about how the economy functions. So commodities are basically, for me, and the way I'm going to use the term, are objective things with defined characteristics and homogeneous quality, which means, one unit of this is like everything else. So the key thing here is quantity, right? Because the quality is controlled for, they have defined characteristics that everyone agrees on, and these are objective in the sense that they are, everyone has the same idea, no one disputes it, and some examples of these things are like bushels of apples, a gallon of gasoline, an ounce of gold, a sheet of paper, a milligram of paracetamol, which is aspirin, a metric ton of CO2, a megawatt of electricity. The point is that one of these is just as good as another, right? You're not picky. You're not saying, what vintage is this gasoline? I only want gasoline from 1989. 1 gallon of gasoline is just about as good as another. And that's kind of what defines a commodity. But we also have these things, assets. And these are subjective or intangible, have a subjective or intangible dimensions to them. They have heterogeneous quality, and the differences in quality are key, which means that different people can have different ideas of what value to put on these things. So, for example, different people might put different value on their personal health, different values on different services.